Was it an easy book to write for you? Did you find the process easy?
I found once I'd actually reminded myself what I am, which is a journalist, and what you have to do is sit down and don't wait for the bird of inspiration to sit on your shoulder. It will never happen. You sit down and treat it as a factory job. So you sit down. I would come to work in my office every morning at, say, 9 or 8 o'clock or earlier, and I'd write for 3 or 4 hours, and I'd write 2,000 words. And I did that till I'd written 140,000 words. And I delivered the book a month ahead of schedule, which Polax, the publishing house,
he's never known that.
They had to put it in a drawer for another 6 weeks to pretend it came late.
And you could have been called
Michael Melbourne Parkinson.
Or Melbourne Gershwin Parkinson.
Melbourne, well, that was my mother. My father wanted to be called Melbourne because we'd run a test match at Melbourne that very year. And my mother, being a woman of great common sense, thwarted him by saying, well, if he could have Melbourne, if she could have Gershwin, who was a favourite composer. So the idea of Melbourne Gershwin Parkinson did not appeal to my father, who feared for my consequences had I had that name in a pit village. But I always wanted to be a good writer, a good journalist. That's where I wanted to be. That's been my motivation throughout my life. And the rest had kind of happened to me quite by chance. I've never applied for a job apart from the first one. You know, I just kept being picked up like some whore on a street corner, you know. Come into my car, little lad, and sit down and let me touch your knee.
And you met the guests before. You had a wee word with the guests.
Well, just on a wee word, just say to them, you know, anything you don't want to talk about, and that could work either way. I mean, you had to make a judgment about what's private and what's not. I say in the book that, you know, Rex Harrison said to me he didn't want to speak about his wives, and I said, well, you have been married 8 times. There'd be a big gap in the conversation. He started laughing and said, well, fine, of course, and we did talk about his wives.
Meg Ryan.
Well, I mean, she was in, as Americans say, an unhappy place.
Yes.
I went into the dressing room to say hello to her beforehand, and she was sitting at one side of the dressing room and her entourage at the other, and what's more, she was facing the wall, so I thought this is not a sort of happy place to be.
What about the guests you never got?
Sinatra. And of course, I mean, you know, the old question is, you know, who would you most like to interview? And of course the answer is the Queen. I mean, just imagine what an interview she is. Absolutely. You know, I mean, you think of the people she's met, think of the circumstances she's met them in. Think of the observations she could make. I mean,
I always think she'd be brilliant in a pub quiz team, because she knows everything, you know, about everything. She's been briefed, she's been told, she's all. And I mean, obviously they'd recognise her. You couldn't have her sitting in the corner of the crowd. So you'd have to put her in the car park on the end of a mobile phone. So you go, Liz, who won the Derby in '82? No, it was the other one, wasn't it? No. But fascinating. But of course, you know, you've met the OBE and the knighthood. And what did she say to you?
She's just very, very funny. She said, "How long have you been on television, Michael?" And I said 50 years. She went, "Whoo!"